Yeah, just one more question which I just thought of before we move on to the next topic. Not a probably rapid fire one, but I want to speak on how media, news, social media basically influences the rate of depression. Because all I see if I turn on the news today, or even a month back for that fact, they've been covering Sushant Singh Rajput's suicide case, which then got to drugs. Before that, it was the COVID-19 pandemic. So, what do you think? How much does an effect does this actually have on your mental stability? Because if you keep on seeing bad news or listening to bad news, how do you think people can feel about this slowly, especially if they're already in depression? How much does this affect them, and how do they avoid it? Because you can't completely avoid news, and it seems that the world has no good news anywhere. Because they did an hour special of today where they launched the new tunnel from probably in Manali. They launched a new 30-kilometer tunnel. Correct me if I'm wrong. But then right after that, they went back into the depressing news of suicides and drugs and Bollywood and all that. So I wanted to ask you, what do you think about that?
Well, okay, so the news I think is very interesting. I actually took a 6 year sabbatical from the news, maybe quite a while ago. And it was when I was running my business, and I just thought it's draining me. And like all Indians, I think we keep abreast of the news a lot. And I didn't know why, but I just knew it was having a negative effect on me. And so I stopped for a while. And I found that my life didn't change very much. You would think like, oh, as someone who is running a business, you need to be aware of the economy. It wasn't affecting my business. And the things that I really need to know about, I heard about through other people. Like I didn't know about the tunnel being opened up, but you just told me. And I learned a lot of what I needed to from the people around me. And I was surprised 6 years I turned off all sources of news. And yet I was still so much abreast of what was going on. However, now I do watch the news, but I still manage it very carefully. So for the longest time, I used to have, I still do, it's slightly different now, but I had a 15-minute limit. So I use my Apple devices. I put screen time passwords in all of them. Only my mom knows my password. My mom still manages my device. And it just locked me out of apps. So I think I had 10 minutes on social media. So anything over 10 minutes, it's called screen time. On the Apple phones, it's called screen time. It comes as a default part of it. You can set up a passcode. I would say give it to somebody else. I just get locked out of so the way it used to work is I got time limits on all apps, so you can put a category of apps. Social media, I gave myself 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, I couldn't open it no matter what I did. News, I think I gave 15 minutes. 15 minutes, it locks out. Now I just use it in times. So I think up till about noon in the day, I have no access to those apps, and after 10, it locks it out. I mean, there's still emergency things you can do to, people need to get in touch with me, but most of it I just lock out. And now I don't even need them because I don't, like you said, I don't go on social media as much. I'm just not. You see, because all of those things, there's a reason why. So we can't blame the media companies. Okay, there's this whole thing about hating on the media, and I think it's nonsense. It is an industry that is evolved. We as consumers tune into that stuff. We're addicted to it because it triggers the same emotional spirals I'm talking about. Let's take something I am familiar with, like keeping up with news about Donald Trump. I know so many people who are obsessed with Donald Trump, and I was myself included. Then I kind of started realizing, wait a minute, I noticed that on the days when I'm not feeling good, I actually want to hear more about Donald Trump. And I was like, why is that? And it's because everyone is so critical of him that it's almost relieving. It's like, okay, you know what? I'm not such a bad person. People are hating this guy. Yeah, he's a bad guy, And I think that's such rubbish. It's just corrupting our humanity because I am Donald Trump. I'm exactly the same. So are you. We're all the same people. Anything you see in someone else is see it here first. It's here, And by attacking each other, we're just. But I'm addicted to it. You see, and the same thing with news. And there's a lot of really interesting research on news and the willpower. I think it's by Kenny Gonlin. I think she's a doctor at, I don't know, somewhere in the States. She's got this book on willpower, and she talks about how the news will actually drain you of willpower, especially negative events, and how the brain. See, if I was walking along the path and there was, like I said before, like a sign of a snake, I saw a slithering snake, or on the other side there was like a little cute puppy, right? Or like some lovely fruit. My brain is hardwired to focus on this thing. And that's a defensive mechanism. It's as it should be. If I was walking in the wild and I was like, oh, look, lovely fruit, and ignored the snake, I'd be dead. And so that's why ancestors who put more weight on negative events. Now, the research shows that you will feel a certain amount of negativity if you lose money or if you gain money, right? However, if you lose, let's say 10 rupees, or let's make it 100 rupees, right? You're going to feel a certain level of bad. Let's say here, that's how bad you're going to feel. To feel an equal amount of emotion at winning, you have to win 1,000 rupees, 10 times more to get the same level. If you won just say, what did I say, 1,000 rupees? If you won just 100 rupees, sorry. If you won 100 rupees, you'd just be 10 times less. You would literally need to win 10 times more money to feel the same emotion. That's why. And it's the same reason why on the news, they pump out everything that's going wrong. It's because your brain is hardwired to say, yeah, focus here, focus here, focus here. And the more we focus, the more it drains our energy, it drains our chemicals, because it's prompting the stress. Your body is saying, okay, there's something. India is a dangerous place. Life is dangerous. Life is scary. Stress, 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 right? And we get addicted to it and we jump on it. And now it's almost as if we don't quite feel alive unless we know what's going wrong. It's why gossip is so contagious. Your friend calls you and says, "Did you hear what happened to this person?" Now, why are you interested? Like, why do you want to hear about, what this person did wrong or why they made such a fool of themselves? But suddenly you're so interested, right? And you jump on that thing. So I think my answer to it is that I limit myself to it. And in order to break the initial addiction, I do not give myself access. I don't rely on willpower. Now I can rely on willpower because I have practice. I no longer am addicted to those things. But initially, I just took that choice out of my hands. I gave it to my mom, and I'm locked out of everything. I just don't have a choice. Sorry, can't get on it. And so I would encourage people, like, you can, like, just looking at the homepage of I follow the U.S. news because I go there for work and stuff. So even just looking at NPR, I can just in a snapshot see what's happening there, or Times of India or what Hindustan, whatever Times or whatever. Just looking at a snapshot for 2 minutes, just headlines, BBC headlines. And then if you want to know more, you can do it later, but don't deep dive. It drains you.
Yeah. So it is about this pandemic or lockdown. So we can all agree that this pandemic or the lockdown has given us a lot of spare time. So what happens when one gets a lot of spare time is that we tend to use that time to overthink. So how do you suggest one deal with overthinking?
So, okay, when it comes to overthinking, what I've always found is that our brains are quite messy. And so we have this swirling, I call it the ether, right? So we've got, what I call it, maybe everyone calls it ether, I don't know, but I think of it as my brain ether, right? It's kind of all swirling, all these thoughts and worries and fears swirling, swirling. So for me, journaling has always been a wonderful tool because I can take all that swirling and I put it down somewhere. I do what I call a brain dump. It's like a mind map with just everything on my mind. I don't have to even process it, and many of the times I used to do a thing from the artist way called morning pages, where I would fill 2 pages a day, stream of consciousness writing. the rule was for 1 year I wasn't allowed to go back and look at that journal. The idea was to just take it out of here and put it down. And it is an incredibly helpful tool. It helps you to see, it helps you to work, you can process, it's down, it's out, it's not just swirling up there. Mood words is kind of the refined version of that. So that's my bare minimum. If I don't have time, I'm just going to do that. But beyond that, I will write stream of consciousness, just write my thoughts down, do brainstorms, put it all out there, that's the one hand is like downloading. On the other hand, I find that having rituals, having a plan for my day, not rigid but fluid, is really helpful. When I'm kind of tempted to numb or avoid or overthink, or it's really good. It's really useful if I have something else to flow into. So I was an incredibly undisciplined person. I think that's part of studying design. I was a creative artist. Everything was about being flexible and not hate routines and everything. And then I discovered that really, if you want to do life well, you have to master the basics of living, the real basics, like being organized, like cleaning, like eating well, like sleeping. And when you look at our lives, where is there time to do everything? I've taken out so many commitments. I do very, very few things in my life so that I can spend all my time devoted to getting good at the basics. But every day I will do my kriyas, jalaneti, whatever it is. I will do yoga, I'll meditate, I will write, I read like crazy. I average just over 100 books a year. So it's about, 2 to 3 books a week I'll be reading sometimes. Yeah. I mean, I love books. So, but and I speak, I speak different languages. I want to learn those languages. I want to learn a new instrument. I want to spend time with my family. Like I want to, keep my house organized and clean. Where's the time to do all that? Right. And what I found is little and often always beats big and one. And so what I did was my first day was literally one ritual. And a ritual for me is different from a routine. A ritual is something that I will do no matter what, but the length of time that I spend on it can be tiny, 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 So I think my first ritual was yoga. I wanted to put yoga in place in my life, right? And so I started with I would roll my mat out. That was my ritual. So I had no time. I roll my mat out. I stand on my mat, yoga done. But the science is amazing on this. It is so much more beneficial for me to just roll my mat and stand on it, say yoga done, than to skip that day. Because it breaks the pattern that I'm creating, right? And so what started with one ritual is now about 100 rituals. I do about 100 things exactly the same every day. And if someone examined my life now, they would look at me and go, "Oh my God, that's insane! Like it's so disciplined and so structured and everything." But it did not start that way. It's just a really small basics. We all overestimate what we can do in 1 year. We grossly underestimate what we can do in 10 years. And so if you're stuck at home, you're overthinking and just start with one basic ritual. I would say journaling is a very powerful tool. And then you build on it. And then you have like a series of things you do each day, And when you're like, oh, I'm overthinking, you just flow into that next one, the next one, the next one. And if you can make those rituals about your mental health, about your emotional health, your physical health, then you are golden. Because you are setting yourself up for the future. 10 years of meditating, 10 years of daily yoga, 10 years of journaling, 10 years of reading, 10 years of sleeping well, 10 years of eating well are huge. It's almost impossible to talk about the impact of that. And so that's what I would do with the pandemic. That's the opportunity of the pandemic. It's really giving us that opportunity.
To add on to that point, Rohit, I feel that if you're the audience, you need to find that way of downloading, because it might not always be journalism. It might be something you're interested in. For me, it was music. So whenever I had the thoughts here, I would turn to my piano and I would play it. I would play crazy things, I would play sad things, I would play good things, but I would play whatever I felt at that moment. I think that helps in downloading as well. One of my friends, initially, what he used to do is whenever he was mad, when we were in engineering and he was in the first year, he used to take apart stuff like anything he could find, old DVDs, probably junk from the nearby trash, whatever he could put his hands on, he used to take it apart. And one day he saw, okay, I have so much stuff with me. So, so what do I do? Then he slowly started putting pieces together, creating something new from junk, building stuff. So all you need to do is find that thing to download. And once you find that thing to download your emotions onto something else, I think you'll automatically find your other half as well. Because it's like yin and yang.
Okay, I would want to challenge that. So maybe you could tell me more. Like, I do believe that there's so many practices, right, that help you to be in touch with yourself, be present, feel your emotions, become aware of them. Music, art, painting, so many ways of creating and tapping into that. The part that I would then want to know, how do you now, in a way that you can sustainably control and work with, how do you then process it and work with it so that it's not just a vague kind of idea? You know, when you're out there and you're facing some of those challenges, you have these tools and tangible ways of processing it. Where does the processing in a structured way come up?
Okay. So I think initially what happens is, since your mind is so clustered, so your mind is like using your trash. Every couple of days you need to keep throwing it out and getting it recycled, else it's going to just overfill. So what happens when your mind is completely full of random stuff, a lot of stuff? It may not be always negative emotion, but you have those days where you're very restless, as you said, or unsettling. For some reason, you just can't get your mind right. So what happens when you're able to express, or you're able to put all those emotions you're feeling? So now what you've done is you've dumped all the emotions, you've recycled your trash. Now when you do that, you're focused now, because you are not feeling the weight of all those emotions which are there. So you're like sudden. So I would say first thing is, there are a lot of things you would have forgotten when your like mind is clustered, and then you'll be like, oh, okay, so I had an assignment due next week, and I had forgotten about it, but I remembered it just now. So you remember the things you want to do. And when you're feeling good, you're automatically motivated to do something. If it is completely clustered, you just don't have the time to think about it.
No, again, I agree with you. I agree with you that these are good ways to express and to come to terms with and feel the emotions and release some of it. Uh, the thing that I'm a bit cautious about saying is that that is enough of the journey. Because, you know, I also know plenty of musicians, my friends included, where we can kind of like, okay, so I'm feeling this, so a way for me to get it out is music, and they turn to their music and they play and they feel better. But that's a beautiful way to bring it out, express it, and so on. But sometimes the dealing with it cannot happen. You know, I'm talking about that next step about being intentional. Once you release that, because it's the question you asked earlier. You know, are we trying to just do things right? You know, at what point in that process do you critically kind of come in and explore opportunities, new states of being? You know, one of the things that I'm finding the most powerful in controlling my behavior is my narratives. There are so many cultural narratives, beliefs that I've cultivated from my family, from my society, that influence me in so many subtle ways. And as I begin to explore, I'm uncovering those narratives. But there's some intentional work I'm doing. You know, I'm literally examining those narratives. I'm rewriting them. That takes a platform that of intentionality. And for me, that's where the written word comes in, right? Where I can, or talking through with someone or something where I can, kind of tangibly work on it. So that's what I was thinking. It's beautiful to download and but I think you can do it possibly, and maybe the way you write poetry or you write, but there needs to be something where you can actually tangibly then take it to your life,
Have like a clear path which you've drawn out, because you can then explore the steps, is what you meant.
Yeah, I think just to wrestle with it, because, okay, it's like music is a language. Movement is a language. I know many dancers will dance their way through an obstacle, and these languages, they come out of the expression, but do we get a chance to then capture it and work with it? And that's where the written word, gives us a chance to rework and redesign. And I write a sentence, and I think you can do it. Maybe if you have enough intelligence and body movement and so on, you can do it then and there. But just so long as you actually are doing it, rather than we start to escape into, these outlets, and then it just becomes like, oh, whenever I'm upset, I create art, but I don't actually process, change, grow.
Okay, I agree with you that then you changed my thinking on that one. Anxiety. So coming on to that topic, WHO actually describes anxiety as it's an important ability of human beings to escape certain life-threatening obstacles. But I want to ask you this, okay? Because I know a lot of people who suffer side effects of anxiety, like panic attacks. And a lot of people don't know about these side effects, because a lot of people, when uh, they see somebody having a panic attack due to anxiety, they'll be like, oh no, he's having difficulty in breathing, but he's not able to breathe. So they do the normal physical medical procedure, and then he doesn't get all right, and they're like, oh, something's wrong, probably not that. So for all the viewers out there, or for all the people out there, what exactly are the types of bad anxiety, or the bad forms of anxiety? Because although it is useful, there are certainly some side effects that come with it. And when it is not a life threatening situation, or it is a situation where it is a psychological or a mental situation, these also come and fall into the category of mental health. So, as you said, because I've seen a couple of friends, when you mentioned panic attack, I was like, a few years back, I wouldn't have known what a panic attack is. But then after seeing some of my friends like having difficulty in breathing, suddenly breaking down and crying, and then suddenly being all right. So, how would you describe anxiety, and what are the forms and how you'd prevent it?
Again, anxiety, I think, is the product, right? It's the end result, and I think it's the state that is the thing that is so dangerous and so hurtful. We all experience anxiety. We all have anxiety. Like you said, it's a natural response to perceived threats, and so it's trying to protect ourselves. And so something might go wrong, we're going to feel that. But if we're stuck in that state, then I think we need to do something about it. Again, my first point of advice would always be get professional help. If you're having panic attacks, don't. I have this in people in my own life, my own inner circle, where they're having panic attacks, and then everybody's like, just sleep well and read and just relax, and you need to step and sit outside, just stop worrying so much.
Also hate the fact that when people are having panic attacks, people are like, just breathe, it's going to be okay. Like, that is the one thing they're not able to do, and you're asking them to do that.
I mean, so the advice itself is not bad, because the science is showing us that literally, if you will hold your exhales for longer than your inhales, they can reduce the panic, right? Even if you're finding hard to breathe, if you force yourself to, it does help. So in some ways, they're kind of giving good advice, but it's still, the message your body is sending you is, hey, something needs to change, So I think it's popular today to try to deal with it ourselves, like it's like we should be better. Watch some YouTube stuff, read some self-help books, get over it, deal with it. But why would you do that? There are people whose entire lives, their whole jobs are to study this and to help us. Yeah, and this is a science. There are people who have passed on that information for generations. One of the biggest benefits of going to a therapist is they can see patterns that you can't. They're working with thousands of people who are going through this. They can, I was always surprised when my therapist would say, and then this is happening, right? And then you feel this, and then you've been doing this. Have you been realizing? And I'm just like, yes, yes, yes. And it's like, how does she know this? Like, this is insane. Like, how could you, no one knows this about me. But it's because she's worked with so many people. To her, it's not new. And she's got strategy. She's got tools. She's got things in her retinue that can help me, and she can tailor it to me. So I think that the biggest thing I would say is that often anxiety is, especially anxiety as we use it today, it often represents worry and panic without a clear source. And it's like there's something causing this, and I think that's what you don't know what it is. And that in fact adds to the anxiety. So now I'm anxious about being anxious, because I don't know what that is. And it compounds and it gets worse and worse and worse and worse because it's like, and everyone's telling you that you should be fine. One of the worst things I think we can do is point out how everything is so good in your life. People, when I was going through depression and anxiety, I wanted to be open and honest and tell people, but in the end I would not, because they would just get on this rant to me. They would say, like, what have you got to be anxious about? You've got an amazing life. You've got this, you've got that, you've got everything going for you. And what are you depressed about? And I remember one guy just full on attacking me, like literally, just full on, like getting belligerent and telling me that, like, I thought it was cool to have a therapist. And, I literally, he was a friend from school. And he was going through his own stuff, but I literally had to cut him out of my life because at that point, I did not need toxic. I was struggling as it was, So, when things are vague and I don't know, and the first thing I want to do is add a huge, huge dose of compassion, because what we start to do is we start to feel anxiety and then we attack ourselves for it, like, what kind of person am I? Like, why am I so scared? I shouldn't be scared. Like, look at Abhishek. He just stood in front of everybody. He just did that. He did this, and I'm like scared to even look at my phone, and I don't, and we start attacking ourselves, and it adds to the anxiety, it makes everything worse. And so I think the first thing I would do is a practice of compassion. The inner critic is often so high inside us. We all can, when I was teaching leadership to some engineers actually in college here in Bangalore, and I asked them to write down, 10 of their strengths and 10 of their weaknesses. All of them could write 10 weaknesses. They didn't have to think. They just did it like in their sleep. They're like, they could have kept going for 100, But I asked them strengths. I was so shocked. Some of them couldn't even put down one. I mean, I'm serious. Not even one. Isn't that crazy? And most people were struggling with 5. And I was stunned. I just 75 students in that class, and I was like, we haven't learned to do it. And so I want to turn the volume up on the nurturer inside me. So one of the simple tools that I do every single day when I wake up is I stand in front of the mirror and I look at the last day, and I say a present affirmation to myself. So I'll say, I am proud of the decision I made to choose to stay in that conversation even though it was uncomfortable. Or I noticed that I care a lot about this and I'm willing to do the work for it, or whatever it is, I'll literally, and initially when I started doing this, my therapist told me to do this. I couldn't do it. I had no information. I'd stand in front of the mirror and it'd be like, hey, hate everything about myself. So she literally gave me a cheat sheet. We did a brainstorm together, and there were specific sentences, and I had that stuck on my mirror, and I would look at it and cheat, and I would read those sentences to myself, and it felt so fake, man. I felt so stupid. Like I would say, like, it said, like, you really care about people. I would say, look at myself and say, you really care about it. And in my head, I'd be going, like, you're a selfish, arrogant, and but the truth is that those exercises help practice the muscle that wasn't there. So initially the muscle wasn't there, it was atrophied. But slowly I built that muscle. And the next time I was in I remember the first time I was in front of an audience and I made a big mistake. And I noticed such a huge difference. Normally I'd freeze up, I'd kind of panic. My inner critic is, going crazy, and I would do something stupid like lie to the audience, like, make something up about an answer even though I didn't know one, But because I'd learned to turn that nurture up, I could deal with that anxiety, that worry that everyone's judging me in the room. And I'd say it's okay, I'm human. I don't need to be perfect, And in that moment I can then breathe and so on. And so what I would do is, if I was dealing with anxiety, I didn't know what it was about, trying to feel it, I would choose to stop judging the anxiety. I would tell myself every day, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm not less of a person. The fact that my heart is beating and I'm finding it short of, it's okay. Like, anxiety is not this bad evil thing. It's there to help me, and I am worthy of listening to it. And I would start to quote myself in compassion, and then I would start to seek ways of getting help. So initially that might be reaching out to a friend, just talking about it. Never keep it inside. It just gets worse. It just builds. And so I would find a trusted friend. I wouldn't go around telling random people. I wouldn't post it on Facebook or anything. No. Yeah. I would get in touch with someone who's a really good friend, someone who I know that I can trust and cares for me. And I would share it with them and tell them what I'm feeling, even if I don't know what that is. My best friend and I, we do a call every single Wednesday. We've done it for years, and we tell each other all the time, like, man, I don't know what I'm feeling. It's something vague. And we talk it through together, explore it, and, may come back to each other in a few days after some journaling, and then, if it's something much bigger than that that's causing serious, it's costing you your sleep, it's costing you your appetite, your ability to function, and then reach out to professional help and talk to them. It's okay if you don't know what it's about. Absolutely fine.
Also, to add on to that, the difference between compassion and optimism, or being compassionate towards somebody and trying to point out that it's going to be okay, is that when you try to tell them, as you said, it's like, see, you have all the good things in in your life, blah 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 blah. And the difference between that and compassion is, compassionate means telling, see, there are things wrong, but I'm there for you. We're going to get through it. So I think that's the biggest difference there between being compassionate and trying to keep another person positive.
I'm really not into positive thinking. It's not at all something that I skew to. I grew up believing that positive thinking was the main thing, and that, like I said, depression was just people who think negatively and think positively, and I think it's nonsense. There's lots of good things to it. There's lots of skills to it, but as a way of life, to just kind of, if you take it at a superficial level, let's say, of just like think positive, I'm not on board with that.
Once a person really put it in the perfect way for me. He said, to begin with, there was always darkness, because if it's space or if it's your life, you were born in darkness. You can decide to live with the darkness, or you can decide to find contentment within the darkness. You look at the sun, you look at the moon. None of them are actually living in darkness, because the moon is borrowing the sun's light, and it's content with where it is, and the sun is using itself to give out light. So you don't need to say, oh my goodness, I want to be the sun, or I have to be the sun, or I have to be the moon. Just be who you want to be, because you'll always be able to find light in the dark.
Well, I would actually go one step further, Abhishek. In fact, it's the first tattoo and the only tattoo I got. It was a 6-hour thing. I just knew what I wanted. It's a tattoo of an owl. This is actually an Indian owl. It's what's called an Indian eagle owl. And I got it because it's to remind me of exactly what you just said. An owl to me represents the courage to navigate the dark. In some cultures, owls represent wisdom. In India, in most of rural India, this is a very large owl, and it's seen as an evil omen. If it comes near your house and makes a noise, it means that one of your children will die. And it can often be interpreted. So they take these owls and they pull them away from the house and they torture them, make them scream and kill them. It's brutal, and it's actually because of that dichotomy, that paradox, that I got this. Because when I was going through the depression and everything, like I said, most of the advice I got was kind of like Nike, just do it, like just get over it, like just think positive, like just stop worrying, just get over it, just be yourself. It's so easy to say those. I actually made a conscious choice, and therapy definitely was the support to be able to do it. But I made a conscious choice to navigate my darkness, and I said, I'm not going to avoid it. I'm going to go into it. And now I would say that my darkness and my light are such sources of joy, or what we call darkness. Like, I am this beautifully complex, messy human, just like all of us. And that is fine. I'm not trying to get rid of it. I'm not trying to get rid of my weaknesses. And man, I'm always going to have them, like, I think we take our lives and we make bonsai versions of them. We keep chopping the roots because we're scared that
we're like, it's okay. It's nothing big. I think the most important thing is people nowadays try to create happiness. They're focused too much on creating happiness rather than just living in the moment and trying to be happy with what they have.
And one of the authors I'm reading at the moment, she says, if you are not enough as you are right now, then you will not be enough with that car or that job or that person or that child or that publication or that whatever it is. Like, you can put anything there, so nothing external, I think, is going to give you what you need. And it's why it's worth doing the work on the inside.
Okay. Then I shall ask a question on positivity, because I want to end the podcast on a high note. So we've looked into depression and your things to go through it, and your anxiety and how you deal with it, and some simple exercises. Now I would ask you the question of, okay, once you've found the solution, you've done it, every day you start doing it and you'll come out of it. Now, what are the tips and tricks that you do to stay out of it or prevent going into it? So prevention is better than cure.
Okay, so a few things. Firstly, I'm not trying to prevent going into it, right? I think that life is, imagine, I don't know if you've heard me talk about this with you and I, but imagine a mountain and you're going up this mountain and it's a winding path up the mountain. And you start on this path and life is not as easy, smooth path, right? You come to an avalanche, it's like, it's just crashed down this mountain and this path you're going on, the path is gone. It's completely gone. And you're young, you went out in slippers and shorts and you were like, life is cushy, man. I'm going to go to college. I'm going to get married and then I'm going to get a job. And, your whole path is in front of you. And suddenly this thing comes in and just utterly destroys your path. I mean, like, you have no tools. You have no ability. You don't know how to balance on rocks. You don't have shoes. You're slipping. You break your legs. You literally break on those rocks. Now you crawl broken and bloody past the avalanche. It maybe takes you years in some cases, like it did me. And then you find the path again. And you get on that path, and life is so amazing. Like, for the first time, you feel peace again. You feel like possibility. For the first time, I'll never forget, like, trying to feel hopeful again, after all that hopelessness. And you think, man, I've done it. I've come through. I've solved it. I'm like, that's it. Like, I'm on the other side of life. Like, now everything's going to be great. And you carry on that path. Guess what? You come back around. Guess what's waiting for you? That same avalanche is waiting for you. It's just on another level. It's like counting is 1 goes to 11. You've gone back to 1 on another level. Then you go 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. You're like, this is great. 18, 19. Yeah, I feel like, oh, this is amazing. 20. Bam, you're back to 1. But you're just 1 on another level. What that means is that, yes, you've learned some things from that difficulty. That's why I don't resent those difficult times. However, it's not solved. It's not fixed. Journey over destination any day of the week. And you come back and you will face these again. You think you've mastered what it is to handle, like, getting sick. Watch a child get sick, and you see now suddenly you're completely unable to handle the emotions that go through when you're someone you love and so vulnerable. There's all these, you think you've gotten really good at your finances. Well, once you've got a mortgage and loans and you've got a family and kids and mouths to feed, I never forget the first time my business went through a difficult part. We almost went bankrupt. My hands would shake constantly. And I would excuse myself from my employees to go and sit next to the toilet because I thought I was going to throw up. The idea that if I didn't make my business work, their salaries, I couldn't pay their salaries. How would they pay their rent? Some of them were young employees. I mean, I was young. I was like 21 or something at the time. I had never dealt with that. I didn't know what that was like, So my point is that you're always going to come back, right? I think the first thing is in the secret to life, or what I'm learning is that it's about the journey. Forget about the destination. Forget about the becoming. Learn the being, right? And part of that being is about forgetting these expectations on me that I've got to achieve this, this, and this, and this, and I focus on who am I. I will explore the I am first and accept and learn and love myself, right? Now, part of that will be I'm going to come to these dark moments again. No matter who you are, you're going to come to them. But the difference is when I came to it here, man, I broke. Like, I literally cost me my life. The next time I came to it, the tendency was to say, screw this. And you know how many gurus I've met who've done that? I've met so many yoga teachers. That's what I did, right? Traveled around, stayed in yoga retreats and all that. So people who've gone through this, they come back around, they come to it again. And rather than go and keep going on the journey, they think, no, screw this. I don't want to deal with all this shit again. Like, I dealt with it. And so they create like these perfect little bubbles of paradise where they stay in these yoga studios and they talk about love and peace, but they don't let anyone come in. Oh, trust me, there's whole sections of the world where people, like, they always like, oh, energy, love to you, brother. But anybody challenges them and you'll see a totally different side. You'll see this nasty, aggressive person, And it's because what they do is they go through that stumbling, they come to the other side, they come up again, and then they stop there and they preach to anybody who's a level down. Because one level down, that next person's going to say, wow, whoa, Ro, that's so amazing. My gosh, and they're shouting, you guys don't know this, you're about to come to an avalanche, get your shoes on. And the others were so grateful, like, oh, I didn't even have shoes, now I have shoes. But you stop your own journey because you're preaching, And I never want to be in that state. I never want to believe my own PR, You start to believe your own BS, right? And start thinking you were right. And I think that's the beauty of those moments. It's like life comes along and gives you one job, like a curveball, like it's like to teach you, you think you were right, here, handle this, And so for me, it becomes about changing my relationship to fear in the sense that for so long I resisted it. my anxiety, my depression, all of that was always about keeping my fear at bay. And I was spending my life force, my energy, everything in this resistance. What I've learned now is that I only experience fear in an area that I truly, deeply care about. And it is my easiest line to my deep, deep self, my subconscious. And so rather than resist my fear, I am learning to embrace it. So every day I practice all these tools, not to get more fit or to be better at meditation. I'm learning to be able to embrace discomfort. I have a cold shower, one of the first things when I wake up, and I stand in that water. In Bangalore, water gets pretty cold, in the mornings, like it can get, and I stay under that water and just breathe, and I learn to embrace that discomfort. I do it in a small metaphor-like thing with that, because later in the day, when I get into an argument or my dog does something or whatever, I don't react, like I breathe. I can embrace that discomfort. And so that is, why we talk about depression, anxiety, and all that. We attack it, we hate it, we say it's so negative. But I want to encourage, our listeners that it is a gift. I know that sounds horrible to say when you're in the midst of it, but I promise you that it is a sign for great things in your life. Like there's so much better. And like you said, Abhishek, it's a sign that you care about yourself. It's not a sign that you're ready to give up. It's a sign that you care. You're deeply motivated to get things on a better path, a more aligned path. Take that opportunity, but it starts with embracing discomfort. Learn to do it in the littlest of things. So that's my solution to not to avoid those situations, but to learn and grow from the situations, is that every single day I want to practice embracing discomfort. If someone says something that makes me uncomfortable, I want to embrace it and breathe. If it's too much, I back away. I'm not trying to do those advanced asanas, right, and fall on my face. If it's too much, I give myself that grace. But I want to practice embracing discomfort.
Okay, so I think we can end this. So I have 4 points I would like to put for the audience to put food for thought. So first of all, adding to your point and seek discomfort, I think you could follow a channel called Yes Theory. It's on YouTube, and their whole point or their whole channel is based on just telling that first yes. And you don't know how life might change. They've gone into like 24 hours in an unknown country where they can't speak the language with no money, and they have to just rely on strangers. So all that took was just first saying yes. So that's their concept, adding on to your point. So I think people might be interested, and you might be personally interested in checking that out. The second point I would like to put is life is like a game of Pac-Man. So as you go, as you increase the time, I saw Rohit's smile light up, because Pac-Man he can probably relate to. So as the time you survive increases, it only gets harder. And even if you fail 1,000 times, you start to see the pattern yourself, because you know how the ghosts move now. And when you think you've done it all, the game starts crashing because it can't support yourself, and you still have to play through that. I don't know if you guys knew, if you break the high score of Pac-Man, because it's built on a 64-bit machine, the game starts erasing itself and you have to still play through that to survive. So life is like the game of Pac-Man. You can always restart it and redo it. Because as a wise person once said, what the caterpillar calls its end of the life, the master calls it as a butterfly. And trust me, the people who have tried to commit suicide and survived, according to statistics, 98% of them never even have attempted to commit suicide again. So, so basically, if you are able to get through the toughest of times, it is only going to become a method, or you're going to only pick up tools that will help you cross the avalanche quicker and faster. Because as you travel up the mountain, the mountain gets narrower, so your avalanche path or the time you take to cross that avalanche also gets narrower. So, on that note, I would like to end the podcast. But, Rohit, we have one final question for you. It is a feedback question we ask all our guests. So, if you were to do the podcast, this is completely unrelated to the topic, but if you were to do the podcast, how would you do it? Or if you've seen our podcast, what changes would you make?
I think this is a great format, where you have the topic and you have different questions and so on. I think, it's always helpful to narrow the scope, to keep it very focused. I mean, there's so much of other stuff we could talk about, but I'm happy that we kept it narrow. There's a part of me that feels like, oh, there's not the whole picture. There's so much else I want, but I think it's good to keep it on track. So I think that's something really well that y'all did. I wouldn't change very much, man. I thought it was pretty awesome. I like that. I like also I think you should continue the informality of it. Like, don't get on the whole, because I think in India our podcasts, sometimes can be a bit formal, like where we spend time going through these. But just keep it like you said, hey, you want to do it? I'm like, yeah, sure, that would be great. We picked the weekend, literally that came up next. There was no like preparation or whatever. You sent me an email, say this is the broad topics, and we just got into it. I think that's really nice, like keeping it informal like that. And then I think, also following up with what you said, like just making sure people have resources. So you do put that helpline out there. Always wait for people to get in touch. I'm happy for people if they want to, I'm not really that accessible, unfortunately. I do have, I'm going to be launching a website called unfairlife.com. It's still in the pipeline where I'm going to start putting a lot of structured things in there. But I also have that as an Instagram handle, Unfair Life, which I don't really post much at the moment. But if people, listen to this, feel like they want to reach out or they need, want to ask me something, or they think, they want some recommendation or something, I'll try to respond to messages on this, as long as they know that I'm not instant, because I don't get on it so much.
Oh yeah, and when Rohit says he's not instant, please trust me, he means what he says, because unless you have like means or people of ways you can actually like call him up and contact, he generally takes some time to respond to your messages.
Oh, yeah. As part of that window, right, in my day, I've got a small window for when I reply. I'm not going to look at it till that time.
So, Rohit, thank you again for being on our podcast. And we look forward to doing like a couple of more episodes in the future at some point, where we might ask you again, where our channel is much bigger and probably our audience has a wider or another topic where you'd be interested in doing the podcast with us.
Sure. Good luck. I know you guys are going to just keep, growing yourselves. That's the main thing. If you all are learning and growing yourselves as you do it, then it's worth its weight.